Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm Corinne Byggdin with House Flip Forum, and I'm here talking to Laura Cole with Your Latitude. Laura, can you give me a little bit of information about you and your background?
Sure. So I'm a business coach with my company, Your Latitude. And so what that means is working with individuals on whatever it is that they need to focus on to move forward in their goals or in achieving something they're trying to work towards. And I also teach entrepreneurship at Mohawk College.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming that you also work with a lot of teams too at the same time. Okay.
Yes, lots of teams, and it could be the same type of thing. So teams are trying to achieve something, and there could be either a barrier in their way that they're just not able to cross on their own, or
Mhm.
it could be, it doesn't have to be a barrier. It could be that they've got a really interesting project they're working on, and they're just hopeful for that third party to come in and give them some support in achieving that goal.
Okay, great. So I was thinking, I think you'd be really valuable, and you could probably have a lot of great source of information for somebody who's planning to go into house flipping. Because number one, they're first of all thinking, okay, they've probably never done something really like this before. They might come from a totally different career, and this is new because it's entrepreneurial. They've got to take on project management. They've got
Yeah.
to work with new sets of people. So all of these things are probably biggest challenges that they have in their new venture. So I do have some questions for you. And one
Sure.
of them I wanted to ask you is, what are the tips you can offer somebody who are just like new to project management? They've never done it before.
Oh, great question. Well, one of the first things is don't worry about tackling something that you've never done before. You don't actually have to reinvent the wheel when you take on a new venture or try to jump into a new skill set. There are lots of supports out there. And so the first and foremost in project management is just thinking about that process. And so that's what is so great about something like your house flip farm, Corinne, is that you've thought through processes like that before. And so think about the process from start to finish and think about milestones along the way, which is something that you're so helpful with
Right.
that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've created this success path for people so they'll be able to
Perfect.
see every single stage that they have to go through.
Yeah.
And they also get the step by step within each stage, which should be
Mhm.
helpful, to just kind of get that clarity and understand what the next steps are, which maybe leads to a little bit more, maybe they feel a little more confident going forward when they know what the steps are going to be.
One of the key things in project management too is knowing your personality. So some personalities are actually just born with that process oriented thinking path,
Mhm.
and then some aren't, and there's pros and cons for both. So it's not that one is better than the other, it's just knowing when you think of having a very strict process, because project management is that it is going to be a very succinct, strict process. Does that excite you, or do you feel boxed in? and
Right.
and so your own approach to project management, how you feel, your mindset about project management is actually a huge piece in how you actually want to participate in that process. And there's room for flexibility and there's room for structure. And it's just finding your comfort zone in that space.
Okay, great. So, and do you think that can kind of be learned too as you go forward in the process, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and both sides actually need to be learned. So either if your natural tendency is to have that very structured mindset, then you need to try to get comfortable with being flexible within that, because you and I both know the well-made plans, all of a sudden they're a disaster. That plan you thought you
Yes.
had is tossed right out the window. And so
Right.
people who have that default preference to want a nice structure, we need to figure out how to be comfortable with setbacks and with unpredictable things that happen outside of our control. And then the other way is true as well. Some people have a natural tendency to want to be flexible,
Mhm.
and maybe you know don't have that mindset to get things down into that structured space. And but you can learn that as well. So both sides.
Yeah. And I think when you kind of hit the nail on the head, when you're talking about people who don't really know what to do with new, just things that set them off the path. So if some unexpected events come along, that's very common within house flipping. So not only are you dealing with maybe the unexpected, you open a wall and there's something you just did not expect to be there, and you've got to now deal with this new situation. But sometimes too, you also have people who, as we know, like, hey, I instead of talking, I'm going to be talking about like building trades, people who
Sure.
are, the painters and the drywallers and the
Yep.
electricians,
Yep.
all of those people. Maybe I'll refer to them as the I'll talk to them. I'll refer to them as the team members for
Sure.
going. So
Okay.
when your team members are actually, maybe one person couldn't make it because another job got tied up, or another person totally forgot and didn't make it on time. And so you've got all of these people. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way to address this so that you've got these people who have maybe never worked together, because you're building a team
Yeah.
and you're finding people from different avenues. Maybe you found an electrician that your uncle knew, or you found a drywaller as you were out one day and you found them in Home Depot, who knows, right? But you're
Yeah.
finding people through different areas. They're getting to know each other on the job site, but you want to make sure that not only do they work together, but they respect each other, and they do kind of rely on each other in the job that they're doing sometimes. Like the painter needs the
Yeah.
electrician to provide the light. So how are
Yeah.
you going to, how can you get these people to work together well when
Mm.
they don't really know each other?
Oh my gosh, loaded question. So absolutely, when you nailed it when you were saying about how, building a team,
Hmm.
and that is a very intentional process. There's a lot of strategies around building a team, but the which strategies you're going to use depend on the longevity of the team. And so if you're thinking about, you found a good team member that you want to use multiple times
Hmm.
in flips going forward, then
That's
you're going to think
ideal.
very differently. Yeah, that would be ideal, wouldn't it? Because
Yeah,
you're investing this time into getting to know these people.
right.
But if it's a one-off, then you're going to use different strategies. And I guess my question becomes, as and this is a true question for you, Corinne. Like, as um, I'm just wondering what your role is. Like, so as the homeowner who's
Mhm.
doing the flip, who's getting all these tradespeople together, is it your responsibility and your role to make sure that these people all work together?
Good question. Yeah, that is a good question, because in some ways I am kind of bringing them all together. That's my job, bring
Mm,
them all together. The logistics of the whole process. You got to make sure that
yep,
people come in on time, that this person's not getting in that person's way. And so
yep,
the timeline becomes probably one of the most important parts of the whole project, so
okay,
that you want to get that house on the market on time for the right, the right market. You want to hit it properly,
yep.
but you don't want anybody, one person or so, to slow you down. And because that one person slowing you down could just mess up the entire timeline. So they have to
Okay, so you just
gather
made
to
me think
some.
of that's a good point. So you've just made me realize then, I think then back to your original question,
Mhm.
I think the best thing you can do in terms of supporting that team is the logistics part. And so if you can sort out those logistics and make the job as easy as possible for your team members, I
Mhm.
think that's the best thing you can do to actually help create that team cohesiveness, because they're all going to be different personalities. You can't manage all of that.
Right.
But I'm thinking in terms of even as a leader for a team in an organization,
Mhm.
the best thing a leader can do for a team and an organization is to remove barriers to their work and then allow those team members to do their best job and like get out of their way.
Right.
And so that's what I would suggest then is making sure you've got a good structure, like a good schedule,
Right.
um, making sure like any barriers that are in the way that could cause problems, you've thought ahead as much as possible and,
Mhm.
and removed those barriers so that your team members can come in the house, do their great work, not be in each other's way, and then off they go.
Okay.
But
So
in terms of managing their personalities, that might
yeah.
be a bit too much to ask.
Okay. That's good to know. And that's a great point because yeah, you'd probably just lose your mind trying to figure out
You
how
would,
to make everybody happy. You can't.
you would.
So I think from what you've discussed, like probably making sure your job site is as clean as possible to make
Yeah.
people have a much easier flow as they're doing their job and performing their work.
Yes.
And maybe the reminders set to, you know, call them the night before, just
Yeah.
confirming you're on schedule, or whether it's calling, texting, email, whatever preferred communication that they have.
Yeah.
And perhaps even a schedule on site if you can actually keep a
Great
schedule
idea.
going on site, because everything changes from day to day. So yeah, those are good points. Okay. What was another question I had here? So keeping, okay, three parts to this question. Keeping people,
Okay, I'm ready.
number one, motivated. Number two, on time. And number three, loyal. And maybe we kind of already touched on some of those points. The on time is maybe what we talked about with the scheduling and making sure that we're making things as easy as possible for them. Keeping them motivated. What's your thoughts there?
Is very similar to what we were just talking about. And it's a funny thing because often when we talk about motivation in leadership theory as well, people automatically go to the person itself. How do I keep that person motivated? And organizational development theory, motivational theory tells us over and over and over again, you can't actually motivate a person. They motivate themselves by the environment you create for them. And so back to your comment a minute ago, the best thing that we can do is create environments. And so keeping it clean, making sure that the right tools are there if you're supposed to be supplying them, doing your very best to support them in that space by scheduling it properly in the first place. The motivating, it's either intrinsic or extrinsic. So it's, you can either motivate from inside your own self, or you get motivated by environments that you work in.
Right.
But as the homeowner, it's hard to motivate. It's really tricky to motivate someone else when you guys have completely different goals. You're in there for completely different reasons. And so one of my favorite sayings of all time is structure gives rise to behavior. And so if your structure gives rise to behavior. So if you're watching a team and they're not behaving the way that you're hoping for, rather than going to the individual team members and saying, what's wrong with that person or that person or that person? First thing to ask yourself is, what structure are they operating in? And is there anything I can do about that structure that might make their job a bit easier? And if you can figure that out first, then they'll find motivation for themselves.
Good. Okay. So yeah, I think you're right then. Yeah, the scheduling, the reminders, paying them on time, obviously, making sure that they have all the supplies they need and a clean workspace. Those are probably
all the logistics.
Yeah.
Whenever a leader in an organization, I get phone calls about that all the time. How do I motivate my teams? How do I engage my staff? The very first thing I ask them is, does your printer work? Because it's those things that kill people.
Yes.
And then it ruins their motivation when they're trying to do a great job and all they need to do is print a piece of paper and the darn printer doesn't work. And I'll have leaders say to me, should I throw them a pizza party? Should I? I'm like, fix the printer.
Yes.
That's it.
Exactly.
Because then you're showing your team members actually how you recognize the importance of their job by ensuring that the tools that they have actually function well.
That's a great title for the podcast.
Pardon?
That's a great title for the podcast. Fix the printer.
Fix the printer. Yeah. Fix the printer.
But then it comes down to that, right? It does come down to just that sort of thing. Okay.
Yeah, it does.
I think the only other thing that I was kind of wondering about with going back to somebody who's like doing this for the first time, they're really not used to this sort of workspace or even responsibility. So working on timelines, taking control of the whole project, what would you suggest to make them deal with stress management and become more solution focused, I guess, is maybe what they need to do?
Oh, great job. first and foremost is having a goal. Why are you doing this? And you're going to have those days where it is stressful and things go backwards and it's not working the way you want to work. And where that's in the moment, that's in the present, and thinking about in the future, what is this going to look like when this challenge I'm currently dealing with is over? Because this challenge will be over.
Right.
And then what's it going to feel like, and what's it going to be like, and what am I going to be having created once this current challenge is done? And that pulls you into that future space where that goal, whatever it was you decided, this is why I'm doing this, has become a reality.
Yes.
And that focusing on the future and what that's going to be. And also being realistic about your expectations.
Okay.
That is like one of the key things when you're heading into a project of any kind, being super realistic about, this is my first time I'm doing this. I'm going to run into challenges. And what do I know about myself when I do run into challenges? How I problem solve, or how I make decisions when I'm stressed. Be aware of yourself and be really just real about the fact that, yeah, there's going to be some stressful days. And that doesn't mean you're doing a terrible job. And it doesn't mean you're not meant to do this.
Right.
It's a piece of the whole puzzle. It's part of the reality of it.
And it's part of being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That whole idea of failure, right? What is this whole, is there failure? Are there mistakes? And in some mindsets, it's no, there's no failures. And others are, yeah, there's failures. And that's a good thing.
Right.
We can actually learn from our mistakes and keep going. And that we don't actually have to avoid them. We don't have to be afraid of mistakes. We should actually learn from them.
Because if you're actually failing at some things, that means you're at least trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think that's it. Do you have any closing points that you might add that maybe I didn't ask?
Closing points. Nope.
Nope. Okay, good. I thank you. That was really good. You gave a lot of great information. I think there's a lot of things that people never would even consider. And the fact that you've said that people may have mistakes along the way, they may have issues along the way, but it's okay. At least, you just keep moving forward and learn from them. And with every flip, they will get better at it. They will understand people better that they work with. And no, I really love how you took a little bit of the stress away from, don't feel like you have to do it all. Don't feel like you have to manage every little problem, because there's certain things you just can't do, right?
Absolutely. And you're not meant to be reinventing the wheel, and you're not meant to be tackling this all by yourself with no support. There's people like yourself that are there to help you when you're into these new ventures. And that's actually maybe one of the key things I'll leave at the end there, is in entrepreneurial ventures, we often feel like we're on an island. There's something about being an entrepreneur. We feel like we are having to do it all on our own, and that somehow we're supposed to. Like there's this little thing in our head that says, well, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that better mean that you can do everything. And one of the things I teach with my students all the time is ask for help. Ask for help. And how we know where to ask for help is actually by knowing yourself so well. So entrepreneurs have to just really understand what our strengths are, what we bring to the table, what we're good at, and then ask for help to fill in the gaps and build that team.
That's great. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things I have in my first stage of the success path, is trying to understand your strengths and weaknesses, because yes, there are things that you're going to bring to the table that are great. Somebody might be really amazing at interior design, and somebody might be a contractor coming into this. So they've got different strengths, and they've got to figure out what they're good at and bring in help for the rest. So great. Thank you very much. It's Laura Cole from Your Latitude, and this is Corinne Byggdin with House Flip Forum. Thanks.